You'd have to really get good at accents, I'm just saying. It'd be a lot of fun.
Welcome back to the Cannabis Community Project.
Welcome to the Cannabis Community Project.
This is the Cannabis Community Project. Oh, yeah.
Open up, Colorado. It's 420. Time to grind and burn.
This is not your son's stoner show.
Welcome to the Cannabis Community Project, broadcasting live from the Dang Studios at 3835 Elm Street in Denver, Colorado. It's the Grind and Burn Show with your host, Brainstorm. Are you still smoking flower? Stinking up the house? Having your neighbors wonder if there's a skunk outside? Try Cushly products, the natural organic odor eliminator. Lotions, sprays, candles, and soaps. Cushly will eliminate all of those organic smells. Cushly. www.cushly.com. Cannapreneurs, thank you for joining me once again this week. It's always appreciated when somebody is listening to any words I have to say or to the show. I want to tell you about some changes, some things that have been going on, some changes for the future. So every now and then we come to a point in our lives where we have to look back and reflect. Is this really what I wanted? Is this what I was going for? Is this what I expected this to be? Expectations, right? Expectations are, in my opinion, the cause of all problems, from depression to anger to anxiety to even happiness. Expectations. What were you expecting versus what you perceive to have received? You know, the Cannabis Community Project, and when I say that, I mean this show, not just all the shows, but this show in particular about the Grind and Burn. The Grind and Burn represented this idea of grinding and burning through entrepreneurship, business, getting started out in the industry. It was the one thing that brought us to the question of asking, what are we doing every day in our lives to make business happen? If we're going to be in this industry, what role are we going to play? What part do we have in it? What are we doing? Thus the grind and burn. But now I'm thinking of a new concept of what I want to do with this show. I've been rapping away for 3 years on this microphone, talking to people, trying to make it grow. It hasn't really gotten to where I needed it to be or where I would have liked it to be. So now I'm going to do what they tell me or tell us you have to do with all things. Give it away. In order to truly keep something, you must give it away. I had thoughts of maybe shutting down the show, maybe just stopping altogether, because I want to pursue some new business ventures, some new business ideas. I want to bring a couple ideas that I have to the market, and unfortunately, I just don't have the resources or time to do all businesses at once. So the way I was going to handle that was just simply just shut down the grind and burn. Just stop doing it for a while so I could start my other businesses. But then I had an idea, and it really required me going back and reading some emails I'd written to myself, some papers, and some original writings back in October of 2013 when I was first putting this idea together about what I was intending to achieve and what I wanted out of it, and why I chose the name Cannabis Community Project. And then it hit me. There's a reason why I've never used my name and why Brainstorm has always been tongue-in-cheek. It's not really about hiding my identity. I really don't care who knows who I am or what I'm doing. It was always a tongue-in-cheek, but it was always a deep-seated notion that I didn't want people being attached to me as the host. I wanted them listening to the show and the format because maybe one day somebody else would be Brainstorm. And if people were so attached to the host, the personality of the host, then it wasn't really a community show. It was a personality-driven show based on that person. That's not what I wanted. I didn't want to be a celebrity. I wanted the show to represent something into the community. So I had to take a deep breath and step back and think about it, about how I was going to manage doing everything I wanted to do at the same time. And then it hit me. If you want to keep it, you have to give it away. So that's what I'm doing. I've put the word out. I'm looking for the next Brainstorm. I'm looking for the next person who wants to host the Grind and Burn podcast, who wants to take this role in this format on this show and fill in for a while so I can engage in some other business activities. So I put the word out on the social media, looking for the next brainstorm. Who wants to fill in on the Cannabis Community Project and be the host of the Grind and Burn? It could be you. So here's what I require. Now, you might think, oh, I don't have any radio podcasting, blah, 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 experience broadcasting. Okay, that's fine. But we're not a live show, as most of you know that listen. And the production still is going to happen by me in post-production. And I have the format and everything you need to do and pretty much say written out. So here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for people that really want to do this. People that aren't just looking for a job and found some opportunity. I'm looking for people that listen to this show. I've already had a few responses from people, and I've written them back emails saying, great, tell me about how long you've been listening and what your concept of the Grind and Burn is. And only one person has responded. So what does that tell me? People see opportunities pop up on their social media and they respond, and they don't really know who they're responding to. So I vet them out. But I got a couple people who look like they actually listen to the show and they know what's going on. And they're really enthused about being the host. And they want to carry this message forward of what we're doing. So we're going to try it out. We're going to expand the Cannabis Community Project from no longer just a Colorado-based focus. Now we're looking at the U.S. Entrepreneurs and businesses and the cannabis industry around the U.S., we need hosts. We need people who want to host this show from their location. All you need is an internet connection, a good microphone, and the ability to absorb what this show is and take direction. I'll give you everything you need. And it's not going to be solely based on you. There's going to be multiple people trying out for this role. And you're going to have little auditions, and we're not going to really do an apprentice style type anything. We're just going to have people give us their bits, their segments, their demo reels, be a host. Follow my format, interview people, talk to them in the same realm of cannapreneurism, entrepreneurism, business, life struggles, the same conversations we have here. Now, you know this show if you've been listening, right? Because that's who I want to apply for this position. I want the people who know this show. And it's going to be very obvious to me if you contact me and you don't know this show. So it'll just be a waste of both of our times. So if you know this show and you think this could be exciting and you want to put a couple hours of work into it every week and learn what it means to be a host of a podcast, team up with me. I'll make it happen because I'm giving this show to the community as my intention was from the beginning. If it's a community project, then that means anybody from the community who has the desire and a little bit of ganas to work towards it can be part of it. In the past, I used to say if you wanted to be part of the show, participate through sharing and listening and social media and maybe buying products and everything else. But now I'm opening the door and I'm saying, be part of the show, literally. Be part of the show. Be a host. Be the next brainstorm. You don't have to come up with a name if you don't want to. Use your name. But be the person who guides us through that journey as we talk to people. The one who can extract information and help others learn. The one who can bring about the professionalism from the industry. And you have fun with it. Sit in a dark room in your closet and talk into a microphone. Sit in front of your family on a stage, however you do it. For those of you who have been listening to my show for the last few years, know I started out on the street with my microphone in hand, doing interviews from my home, going out to people's businesses. And then we moved into more studio-like locations. Then we started doing in-studio interviews, and then we hooked up with Dank, and we actually got a dispensary to associate with and a full studio, full-time. Now it's time to expand again. Not move on, just move forward. You see, over the last year, I've been trying to get people to start individual podcasts under the CCP brand, and it just hasn't quite worked. It's too much work and not enough really desire from people to want to make it happen. So instead of trying to start new products in the sense of new and additional podcasts to put under the family, I'm going to use the one that is going strong, and that's the one I've built right here on the Grind and Burn. With you guys, you, the audience. that over the last 3 years have taken me from just a handful of listeners, literally on Spreaker and a couple on iTunes here and there, to slowly expanding, now very close, approaching the 50,000 mark. It is because of you guys that I keep doing this. And to be honest with you, from a full business disclosure, I have not made any money from this. I've talked about many times how I've had to continue to work and do part-time jobs and other quote-unquote paying job type stuff because this has not taken off. And I've debated with that. So many times I've wanted to quit. So many times just give it up. So many times in my own pity party of just saying, fine, if people aren't going to listen, then I'm stopping. Well, why would people listen? They don't know me. So I have to keep working and make people want to listen. There's just not enough business model in the sense of advertising and selling products through a media show to really support the full-time focus I had intended for. I'm an entrepreneur, so I do what I do best. I start businesses, and that's what I'm doing. A few weeks ago, I introduced you all to MedBadge Help, new business I'm starting out where I am notary public and public record retrieval for those doing applications in the cannabis industry. We are working them through the MedBadge process, the application process, getting people their documents and getting forms filled out so people can be employed by having an official license, a badge. This is a new business. It's attached to another business that's a little bit bigger in scope, and I want to put some time on it. So I found the lady who's in Trinidad, Colorado, who's interested. I found one who's in Southern California who's interested. And I got somebody else who's locally here in Denver who's interested. We're going to vet them out. Or as I like to tell people, I let people vet themselves out. What does that mean? Well, let me explain. So for many years, as I was growing up in corporate positions and working in kind of a HR of hiring and firing and working through standard work type relationships, I was always focused on this idea of I'm going to vet somebody. I'm going to get to the truth. I'm going to find out what's going on. I'm going to question them and pursue them, and I'm going to investigate them. And what I realized is I was burning all these calories when there was an easier way to do it. It's called letting people vet themselves out. And it can be applied to most any I would say any facet of life. You can pretty much in any situation turn the tables from you vetting somebody to letting somebody vet themselves out. And it simply is done with the posing a task to somebody. So here's how it happens with me in my daily life. I constantly have people approach me about, can I have a job? Can I have this? Can your company do this for me? Hey, can you just throw me a favor this way? All this business relation stuff that people pretty much are pretty ballsy, I would say, pretty brave, right? People nowadays aren't ashamed to simply ask you for something. If they want something, they'll ask. But here's what happens. Everybody knows if you get something for free, it's not going to be appreciated. Everybody knows if somebody else is doing the work, it's just not going to be the expectation that you're expecting from somebody else, right? You go into a business relationship with somebody, you have an expectation, how much work each person's going to do, who's going to do what. Expectations aren't met, people get angry. So you try to vet people out beforehand, right? You try to, I'm going to ask them the questions to find out if they're this type of personality or this type. I'm going to do this to see if I can discover their true underlying intentions. Yeah, it's a lot of work, a lot of calorie burners. Here's how I do it. You approach me for a job, I want to put you to task. You do that task, I'll take you to the next step. And we'll grow step by step until we get to where both people are getting what they want. But here's usually what happens. Somebody approaches me with a ask, hey, can I get a job? Hey, can you do this? Hey, can I do this? I'll put them to task. Yeah, possibly. Here's where we need to start. You want to work for me? You want to do this? Okay, yes, there possibly is a job available. Here's what I need you to do. I need you to write me an email describing what you think of my show, when you first learned about it, and what you feel the theme or the intention of my show is. Now I've just put them to task. I've put them to task on the assumption that if they do this, then there might be a job in hand. But you know what's surprising about human psychology, right? You already know where I'm going with this. 80% of the time, that initial task will never get done. You know why? Because the person who was asking, they were looking for free handout. They're not really looking to do work. They're not really looking to have an exchange or a partnership. They're looking to be given something. Now, in the normal vetting situation, you would try to ask a million questions and pose scenarios and stuff to try to determine one's character and personality. I do it in one simple form. I put you to task. You complete that task, as stated, in the time we agreed upon, expectations are met, we move to the next step. But I know most people will never do it. So I'm pretty secure that I'm not going to be out a lot in my offerings or askings or being approached by people. And that's what we're going to find out. With all the interested candidates, I'm going to do the same thing. People that respond to my ad about taking over the hosting job, I'm going to put you to task. And I'm going to let you vet yourself out. Because that way I don't have to burn calories following up with you. I don't have to burn calories wasting expectation on you. Now, the real hope, right, is that by giving the show away to other people and having other people do it, it's not about will somebody be better or worse than me. It's about will we get more people in the community engaged and start to grow the show so the show's message can have an impact.
Right. No, we're not going to do that.
Check. 38 hours, 11 minutes, 15 seconds.
I don't want to go home.
Oh boy, this is amazing.
1, 2, you know what to do.
Come on.
All right, here we go. Would you like to be famous? In what way?
In a world. Sunday. Ladies and gentlemen, this time,
Those, we don't need those where we're going.
if a crystal ball,
With open eyes and an open mind, an open intention to live with peace inside. We're bound to find the truth in time, yeah. Spread these wings with the ground I fly, and I won't look back, never wonder why. Went to the left, went to the right, had to lose myself to find the light, and the music kept the movement alive. You know it did. So breathe in and breathe out, let's take you to a higher ground. Yeah, soon you saw with me to dance, just give it a chance, find true romance to get the music. Breathe you in, take you in, oh yeah. Music is the melody, I find love in the strangest forms. Peace inside our family, ain't no harm, negativity is gone. We're moving on, yeah. Moving on from hatred, greed and lies. Moving back home, yeah. Fell in love with the music and the rest just ain't important no more, yeah. Eyes and an open mind. Best you be counting your blessing now, don't be wasting time. Truth inside for all of us to find, yeah. Negativity go where the peace reside, positivity flow where the love divide, and the children cry till they realize no but ourselves can free our mind. Mr. Bob Marley, he always said it right, my friend. Find your voice through the noise and left free with a choice. Don't let nobody tell you it can't be done. Humble yourself, y'all really want and to get the music. Breathe you in, it has begun, oh yeah. Music is the melody, I found love in the strangest forms. Whoa, peace inside a family, ain't no harm, negativity is gone. We're moving on, yeah. Moving on from hatred, greed and lies. Moving back home, yeah. Fell in love with the music and the rest just ain't important no more. It ain't important no more, yeah.
And then I want to hear all about if you're still doing
HydroLock.
Yeah, HydroLock.
Yeah.
And hear about kind of you're working through just all the updates, right?
Sure.
So let's just do that. So, okay.
Ian Azam, owner and founder of HydroLock, which was on the 2014 Marijuana Show, Season 1. Basically, what happened with that scenario was I got all the way to the end of the show. I met the investor that wanted to invest. He wasn't very thrilled with the quality of my paperwork or the figures that he was looking for. So I didn't really know when I flew into that meeting with him and showing him that information. I wasn't anticipating or having a certain boilerplate of what he wanted. So I just kind of assumed there were certain things he cared about and certain things he didn't really care about, which was a mistake. But a long story short, it fell through. He wasn't the right investor from me, which is fine.
Yeah.
And we split ways. But that kind of left a hangnail for the show, because if they try to play the show and I'm in every shot, and then at the end, it doesn't work out, which is fine. I'm sure they can figure out some way to make that work out for them. And then long story short, after that, my business partner, which I went with in on this, we separated, got into a big argument, and one person wanted to go the one way, another person wanted to go another way. So, it got, basically we all had a pretty big falling out with the foundation of HydroLock, which was pretty much just me and my associate. But at the same time, ending the way it did, I almost count it as a blessing, because it allows me to critically reevaluate what I want to do with it.
With the way the business ended or the way the marijuana show ended?
No, just the business and the marijuana show, because I'm my biggest skeptic on anything. So when I bring a product out, I want to be able to find every scenario that could go wrong and have a solution for it.
Right.
So what I'm beginning to learn with HydroLock and the company and the product is that it has way more of a versatility than just the marijuana industry.
Right.
And it seems like in this industry, they're not worried about water consumption. They're really not yet, until everyone can't drink water because it's polluted, and then they're going to be looking for ideas. And look, there's Ian.
Some type of excess tax is put on water for this use.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden it's really expensive. So that marijuana show, I watched this last, I think the most recent season, it was on Netflix or on Amazon Prime. Amazon.
Yep.
It seems like it's changed a little bit in format, because what I was watching was just the 7 series of just pitching, like a Shark Tank idea. Whereas when you were doing it, it was more like an apprentice style type show where people were doing activities and events and kind of group type stuff throughout the weeks, where now it appears to be more of just a Shark Tank style where you get a little bit of background about the person and then they go up there and pitch, and there's a brief negotiation. And I believe they're doing it right down at Cultivated Synergy downtown.
Yep.
I recognize the building and, small shot. And they did their best for production. There was a little bit of sound issues that could have been a little better, maybe on the microphone, and maybe some lighting issues and some technical production stuff that personally I thought could have been better. But overall, it seems like they're just trying to do a Shark Tank style type presentation.
And that was kind of why I'm saying it's kind of a blessing, because I still think the identity of the marijuana show wasn't fully in place when I was on it. So it seems like they found kind of what they're trying to do more now than what we did try, which was just trial and error. And I know Wendy and Karen really well. I love both of them. They're really great women. But you're right. There, maybe some cut-ins here and there. But for what they put into it, all in all, they do a lot of good work.
Yeah.
And they get a lot of light on the right people.
Who's that owner of the Starbuds? He's a grump.
Yeah. There's some characters for sure, nonetheless.
But cool. So you moved past the marijuana show. The business kind of got fizzled a little bit. Lost some relationships. Are you still holding on to it?
Yes.
In the future?
I'm not letting go of it. I'm not giving up. I've made a really strong pact with myself not to allow, as hard as it is or as challenging as it may be in the future to bring this to market, I want to leave it open, because I still believe it has a place. Finding that specific spot where it does the best is to be determined. But again, another thing that why I say it's a blessing that the marijuana show didn't work out necessarily is that I have a really strong feeling that this has more of an impact on wildfires and to help help keep them out.
Interesting.
So it's really a better tool for firefighters in putting out fires and forest fires and keeping them out rather than using water or a mixture which is toxic that they have currently. If they use this product, it's non-toxic, it's cheap, they can use tons of it, and and it'll put out the fire 10 times better than water would.
So let's just real quick step back, since it has been a couple years since we talked exclusively about HydroLock.
Sure.
Let's just recap what it is, so those people who don't know what it is. I still have mine over in the corner. You can see it sitting over there, up against the wall.
Yeah, you do.
The not the powder form, the gel.
The gel containers.
Containers.
The cartridges.
The powder form I went through a long time ago with amusing friends.
Nice.
Slipping the powder into their drinks as they're not looking, and then pretending like you're throwing the glass in their face, and all sorts of antics.
A quick breakdown of what HydroLock is. It is a nanopolymer that absorbs 1,000 times its weight in water. And basically, it's a wetting agent, a liquid solidifier. The technical term is sodium polyacrylate. So that is the chemical analysis of it.
So it absorbs water, basically. They're tiny little cells of
correct chains,
bead-looking things that just absorb water and keep absorbing water until they are going to bust.
Well, they absorb it, and then they actually are time released. So over a period of time per molecule or per chain of polymers, they will be activated by the water, and then through a period of time, it will release that water. And then what will happen is you'll water again, or water will get it again, and it will reabsorb that water. So
the original intent was to use in the cannabis industry for growers to basically seed their plants with this gel form water to help keep water in the soil versus liquid runoff, and then to have a slow dissipation where it goes back into the soil, and then when you water again, it reabsorbs, so you're actually putting less water back into the soil because you've averted the runoff.
Correct.
So this was the original intention.
Sure.
What was the reaction when you went out there and tried to market it? When you went to businesses and grow shops and all the people involved in growing, what did you get hit with?
All in all, it was overwhelmingly positive information that people were relaying. A lot of skepticism. It's one of those products. It's not very known. It's not very known by the masses, I would say. It's definitely unique. The way I would display it and show it to people, it was more of a wow factor. But when it
absorption, because a polymer is not unique in the sense of what a polymer is and what it does. It's used in many, many products.
Absolutely.
But you're talking about this specific application, this nanopolymer that absorbs water and does this function, was unique to people.
It not only just absorb water, because that's kind of common sense or common knowledge with polymers if you know about them, but the part to absorb 1,000 times its weight was significant. I think that most of the polymers on the market don't go any more over than 500 times. So the idea was that I had a hold of a specific polymer that was of its best of its class.
Now, how did you get a hold of this? What is your into
That's
this
an interesting
product?
story. Yeah, I actually went to and met with a gentleman over the internet. He owns a company called WatchSorb, and it's a Watchwater USA. And he's an older gentleman that lives in Florida. We got to talking. He had a couple of cool ideas that he was showing me of his products that he invented. And, I got him through a channel of my buddy, my business partner. He actually introduced me via the internet, and we approached him together. But he flew out from Florida to Denver back in 2012, and he met with us. Talked with us a little bit, and he kind of gave us an opportunity, which was really cool on his part, an opportunity to make some money with this product. And he was basically saying, look, I have all the resources and channel ways to bring, to help someone take this to marketplace. He's an older gentleman, in his 80s, late 80s, and he's getting to the point where he can't really necessarily take on a new project like that without, he just doesn't have the energy, nor does he have the time with all the other things he's doing. So he kind of gave us a great opportunity to bring something to the market that was not there. And he gave us free reign over it, but as if I was supposed to do something with it. So I have to
Like find a use for it.
Right. And that was the whole idea of it. And that's when I started thinking, well, the marijuana industry, I see what's going on in California right now. We all know that, the earth is not in the best condition that it's been prior, and that water is going to become an issue. That we need to take the steps necessary to have solutions for these problems.
I thought of you when California, or LA, I guess specifically, dumped into their man-made river those millions of black balls to try to prevent evaporation.
That's clever, yeah.
From the sun. I was kind of thinking of you in the sense of...
It does remind you of polymers, right?
Well, it just reminded me that somebody got in front of the right person and made a pitch for this idea that got accepted.
Right.
How many other ideas were passed by?
Right.
And it just made me think of you and your product of, was this really
the best?
The best of all the explored results? I mean, there was like a committee out there that was exploring the best way to prevent evaporation, and this is what it's like, was it just a good salesman or just stupid administrators and
probably a nice mixture of both, to be honest. The idea is like I said, it is clever. It's a good idea. However, is there better ways?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And why did this way seem to be something that people latched onto, or investors latched onto? Which is it's funny you bring that up, because I'd love to analyze who the guy is that owns that company, and just maybe the connections of that guy.
Right. What the chain of corruption is on that.
Because
I would like to know, I don't know if you know, is there an evaporation difference between liquid form of water and gel form of water?
So there is a difference, yeah. So liquid is a lot faster, and I'll tell you why. So we back to what you brought up, which was it's HydroLock. It's a string of polymer. Okay. And if you could imagine molecularly, what's going on is when a water molecule approaches this chain, what the chain does is it grows, first of all, because of the moisture, and it gets bigger. And then it engulfs the water in a circular sphere. And inside of that sphere, very similar to, like, have you ever been camping before and you've ever left a water bottle, a plastic water bottle too close to the fire? If you notice, it won't actually melt the plastic because of the water temperature inside. So you could put that temperature or that plastic right against the fire, and it won't melt the plastic unless that water is dissipated out or evaporated. So the same concept molecularly is happening, which means that chain is circling that water, right? It's capturing it, but it's got a membrane around it. So, like I said, bringing it back to the fire and helping fight fires, and that's why it's such a great firefighter, is because of that specific trait.
Like a forest could be laid in a blanket of water gel versus that green powdery stuff they drop out of the sky.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's red. It's red.
It's red.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm a little colorblind.
No, you're fine. You're good. You're good.
But it's some type of powdery substance that I assume is just suffocating the fire, right? Like any fire extinguisher, it's more about suffocating the fire than trying to put out the fire due to, like, I don't know how to describe it, like a water where you're trying to put it out versus suffocate it.
Right.
I don't know how to describe it, but there's a difference in how you are trying to extinguish
the fire.
The fire.
Correct. And that is what I don't understand from the fire department's standpoint is they're using polymers. They use a similar chain of polymers that I have. But theirs is toxic, which is silly to me. And then not only that, but they use this ugly red. So any area that they spray it on has to be cleaned properly afterwards, and then, extracted back out of the soil because it's too toxic for anything to live there. So in my eyes, what I didn't understand from them was why whoever's job it was to implement this product for to cover mass wildfires, why that didn't come up, and why they didn't explore their options. And I want to bring, because there's plenty of polymers, safe polymers that, like I said, that absorb maybe 500 times their weight in water that you could use. and it would do just as well, if not better, than what they're using right now. My assumption is that it's going to do a lot better because of and I've used it myself and done minor testing myself with campfires and throwing, having this big fire that's been going for hours and then trying to put it out with HydroLock. And man, it puts it out 10 times faster than actual water will.
And as a camper myself, I can confirm and attest to the fact that water will not put out a fire that's been raging for the last 12 hours underground, even if you can't physically see it anymore. Anybody that's been camping and gets up the next morning and pisses on the fire or dumps water on the fire, there's heat under there, and that water you're dumping on there is not having an effect, is having no effect until you get to the point of saturation, which is not an ideal efficient way of putting out the fire, because saturation requires a lot of water and a lot of time. And if you're talking campfire compared to forest fire, saturation is not really an ideal
applicable at all.
Right. Yeah. In that sense that you're just going to somehow drown the forest until the fire goes out. Doesn't really work. So if I had money and I were going to invest into you, what I would want to invest the money for is to put on like a public stunt, right?
Sure.
I would get like one of those the firefighter buildings that they set on fire or something. And I would put out a public challenge to my local fire department. And I would say something ridiculous like, we're going to light 2 buildings on fire. And you're going to use your standard water and green powder or red powder. I'm going to use mine, and we'll put some kind of public challenge out there. Even if they don't accept, it's going to happen anyways. We're going to make lots of media about it. And we're going to either embarrass you into admitting that there might be a better way. Or before we even get to this point, we can just sit down and have a conversation about why are you using what you're using, and why are you unable to explore other options. So shame and embarrassment is always my tool of.
And honestly, with our government, especially municipality or sections and departments like the fire department, they have to really think outside of the box, because they're using technology sometimes that's old technology. It's old, and you're right. Embarrassing them is not going to do anything, because no one takes the blame for the government anyways. It's just going to be a finger pointing scam. But with them, and from what I've tried to infiltrate this product into the fire department in Colorado Springs, and they literally, they didn't have the time of day to speak to me. I couldn't even get to the right person. We're talking 2 or 3 days of just constant, like, I'll come in.
Bureaucrats.
And then here we go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so,
that's why
cronyism.
you need to somehow get financing so you can put on public displays that forces conversations. If you can't have a conversation with the person you want, then sit outside their firehouse and light something on fire. Metaphorically, of course.
Of course.
In that sense, where you make them come out of the firehouse and say, all right, what's going on here? But I guess that slides back into the first part of the business itself. Is the inventor, I guess, is that what he is? Can you call this an invention, or is this a restructuring of molecules from a previously existing? How do you define this?
It's almost, I would say, a product of the advancement of technology. So what you're seeing is the advancement of molecular, especially nanotechnology, and how it's being implemented in different areas that it was never implemented before. And so you're right, it's about the structure. It's about that they're able to fit more chains. Okay, they have a longer chain of nanopolymers now than they used to ever have, and they're making a lot finer than they used to ever have. So what you're just seeing is it's starting to catch up with that industry, the technology and advancements, and they're able to come up with new products, which is really great. And so back to the question: is it per se? Is he the inventor, and is it per se patentable or some way capitalized? No.
Oh, great.
No. So I looked into it, and I did a lot of research with it. And basically, the only thing you can patent on the whole idea is the process, which is ideally what we want to do. Now, that process also involves other sciences that you want to be very careful with trying to patent certain things with, because you're going to step on certain toes, and those are the wrong people you want to deal with. So what I did was I made it clear, and he's very affiliated with the chemical companies through Germany, and he knows a lot of very interesting people. Now, is it something that I can't per se patent the process? No, I can. We can patent that
the process of making this specific nanopolymer, or the process of
making it.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the only way you can patent it, because the rest of it is basic chemistry.
Right.
So you can't, patent hydrogen.
And even that's questionable. Is the end payoff worth it? Because is somebody just going to find a different way to make it?
Well, no, that's what I mean. It advances every so often. So in 2 years or in 20 years, I think it's safe to say they're going to have something that's 10,000 times as water absorption per its weight in water.
So with that in mind, where do you look towards the future of reviving this company? Do you revive it in the form of a product where you take an end application and come up with a product?
Right.
Or do you still try to sell wholesale bulk raw material? I mean, how do you keep this company?
I would love to actually have several bases that I'd have HydroLock be implemented. And when I say bases, I mean industries. So what I see, that's why I mean bringing up the fact that it's a little more intricate than I had assumed in the beginning. It's great medium for growing, yes. It also has great characteristics with fire. It also has great characteristics with keeping things moist. So if you need it for humidity and stuff like that. So there's all these different great...
Moist without saturation, right?
Right.
Like if
dry
you wanted
moisture.
to, exactly, right? If you need, like, I'm thinking medical type stuff.
That's it, yeah.
But I'm thinking medical type stuff where if you need something cool, usually it's put on some form of ice or some type of blue ice pack of something, which is just a form of keeping things cool, but there's no moisture there.
Right.
But maybe a gel could be both moisture and a cooling agent and a non-saturating type agent, where if you have something you don't actually want to get wet per se.
Yeah.
But still,
Absolutely.
So you need a design lab. You need like a research and development crew, and you need money, and you
lots of money, yeah.
Yeah, so you can develop products.
Yeah.
Is what you need. You need
Ideally.
money to develop products, and that's a catch-22. How
It
do you
is.
get people to give you money prior to having products?
Exactly.
How do you get products prior to having money?
Right. Now, and these are questions that you have to figure out a creative way around.
Right.
And there's a lot of research that I've done firsthand that makes me feel the way I do about it, but to relay that to a potential investor or someone that has no clue, an outsider looking in, I mean, it's very challenging. I mean, the people love the idea of HydroLock until they start trying to figure out, like, if they were me and what they would do with it, because
how to sell it.
It's a challenging thing to do, man. It is. But at the same time, it does have its place. And you're right, with the right amount of money and time. And I don't really think it would take too much necessarily money at first to get it off its feet.
Right.
But I do think that in the long run, if I wanted to capitalize on a market, I could, but it would take a little bit more money. But by that time, it should be self-sufficient and taking care of itself.
Well, you're really in a predicament because sometimes you have a product where people are struggling to figure out how to use it.
Right.
And then other times you have a product where there's so many uses, you're struggling to pick one because you have to pick one.
Yeah,
right?
you can't.
You can't possibly develop every possible use.
As much as I'd love to do that,
right?
It's not very sensible of a launch per se of the company. Yeah,
and the problem that you're kind of expressing is not that people are struggling to come up with uses, is that there's so many potential uses. People are struggling to actually go, well, which one is
the best
right, to apply this to and the one to run with,
right.
What about my idea of the jello wrestling that I presented some time back?
I'd love to sponsor it.
We could go bar to bar, and we could basically, for pennies on the dollar, create jello wrestling events. I mean, imagine if in 10 minutes you could create a tub of jello-ish ready to wrestle versus actually trying to make jello the size of a tub. I mean, you could save bars hundreds, if not tens of $15
Yeah.
every year in their jello wrestling.
There's my
expert.
dilemma. Right.
Well, I mean that's a silly kind of idea, but it's one that I'm kind of using as a point that many products that we think of like Silly Putty, because you ever watch these shows on like Discovery, you know, like how did this come about, and you watch like Silly Putty. Well, Silly Putty was originally used for this, and then somebody, you know, it's like now all of a sudden it's a toy on a toy shelf, whereas before it was in the industrial section of, you know, your
small
Home
printing
Depot
shop
show or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe what you have is the pre-stage, and what you're waiting for is for somebody to come along and say, well, maybe we can make a pet rock out of it and sell it for $15.99 at the local King Soopers, and you know, something along those lines. And what you need is ideas. You need inventors. You need people to basically say, hey, what about this?
An incubator,
Right, an incubator.
Yeah.
And then the ability to empower those people that don't exhaust your resources, where somebody can say, hey, have you ever thought about using it for this? And then you have a way to say, great, take that and let's see if we can do something with it. I don't have any way to explore that, but if you can figure out a way to,
I'd love to do something
figure
like that.
out how to make Silly Putty out of it, then come back to me, and you know that
We'll work with them there,
right. So the question is about how do you launch or relaunch the idea without letting too much time pass where you kind of lose it. You know, I'm thinking about like this idea of space and gravity, right? It's like you're hovering around. How do you not fall back to Earth, and how do you not float away into space? How do you keep in that perfect little space where you can actually move the business forward?
Right. The best way to answer that is you have to have a positive outlook, right? Okay. And you have to have some goals in place, and you have to make a certain amount of money before that you can even think of the future. So you have to sustain the business. Sustaining the business requires an initial investment. So which is why I went on the marijuana show. That's what this all led up to. And with the initial investment and the marketplace that you want, that's how you launch your company to keep it in its area or marketplace that it should be. Now, as we were talking, the dilemma is that there's so many applications. Now, marijuana, I think, is one that it's good for. Is it the best one for? Probably not. And I'll tell you why, because a lot of these guys, what they're growing, and this is knowledge from being in the industry and growing myself, is that a lot of people use, especially on a massive scale, or hundreds of thousands of pounds, or thousands of plants, you have a regimen of nutrients that you're using, and 90% of them are going to be high sodium. And what that means to polymers is basically it's no-go, because the more sodium you have, the more salt that is involved in your whatever you're using, your medium, whether it be cocoa or cocoa mix or whatever. A lot of times there's a high sodium content. And then if you're using synthetics, as far as nutrients, there's a lot of sodium in there. Not always. Not all of them, but if you're using a cocoa blend or cocoa in general, you're going to have sodium. So the dilemma with it is that if you're using HydroLock for growing and you use a lot of these heavy salt-based nutrients or mediums, HydroLock won't work, and it's because of that sodium. So
it doesn't pass through the membrane.
Well, it won't allow it because it mutates that membrane because the sodium itself attaches to that chain, and it just has weird chain structure, and it won't be able to hold molecule of water. So that's where the dilemma is. But at the same time, if you use this in an application of natural, if you use soils that don't have cocoa in them, you have a much better chance of retaining that polymer. And the last thing we want to do is have people try to have too much polymer in their grow medium, and now it's just too wet all the time. Right.
So what I'm hearing you say is that growing cannabis is so delicate,
right,
that asking growers to experiment and their grow process is just too risky, and that's the challenge. And because the market of cannabis in general is small,
Right.
there's just not enough market out there to approach people and get people to experiment with this because the process is so delicate.
Right.
So what I hear you saying is just we just need to jump to the agricultural side of things where it's a little tougher, right?
Right.
The plants are tougher, not as delicate.
Sure.
And it's a lot of outdoor growing and a lot of actual water use being consumed on a very large scale versus indoor marijuana grows.
Correct.
So maybe it's just a difference in industry, still same use.
Sure.
Just a different industry, one to general agricultural.
Right. And that's why, I kind of laid off on the marijuana show and didn't pursue it as hard as I wanted to, is because I started coming to the realization that try to train growers to not use these synthetics and salt-based stuff, but that is what the majority of them are using. And this industry is growing and it's evolving, and it's still in that experimental stage as far as nutrients go and as far as grow mediums go. Most people have it down pat, but there are different, things coming to market. So, and I have to keep that in mind with how that will react with HydroLock. And, it's not that it doesn't, it won't work completely with it, but it isn't the best application for it.
Right.
So, and that's back to what we were talking about in the beginning, is what is the best application for this product? And does that involve marijuana? I think it has a place for it, but I don't think it's necessarily its bread and butter as far as showing its attributing traits that are, let's value a benefit here. So is the benefit of saving 50% of your water runoff comparatively to saving, 50% of a wildfire? So where is the value right there? I mean, do people value saving that 50% of runoff, or, is it more valuable, bigger of an impact to be able to say, hey, this product can be used to literally stop a fire in its tracks?
Right.
So I'm trying, there's a hard balancing there because, of course, I have a really big love for cannabis. I have a very big love for water and the earth. And, so of course I want to implement it in both, but what is the market and what is the niche where HydroLock makes the most sense? I really had nightmares over this, but I don't think it is cannabis at this point in time. But is it to be not ever in the industry? No, I think it will be in the industry eventually. But right now it seems to me that growers are using so many different techniques and different things that they are very skeptical. Yeah. And it's hard to get an investor on board for, use 90%, 80% of your plants, 50% of your plants have HydroLock. Try it, see what happens. Or even one or two. A lot of them are reluctant to do so, especially from someone that's my age, walking in there, showing them this product that they probably have a hard time having the mental capability of even understanding it molecularly and how it works. And then to try to relay that and have them think about it. A lot of times that when I do show people that, I love that it gives people a spark, and it does give people thinking, it gets them thinking about it and how to use it. And it does have a place in basically agriculture alone, but also I think the cannabis industry specifically, but with a lot more refinery, like I'm saying. So basically what I see where HydroLock will fit is we will, and I thought about this idea before I went on the marijuana show, and I probably should have pitched that first, but my first pitch with them was going to be a soil company, and I was going to produce the soil, but I was going to have it, laced with HydroLock, meaning that I could make that perfect formula for them so they didn't have to try it. Yeah. And then they could benefit just by using it because I've already made the formula for it.
Right. So you're basically giving them the entire medium, right, versus saying add this to your existing. So it's a different approach, a jump from a psychological standpoint of what the person has to engage in. Whereas when you give them just the HydroLock, they're having to risk their plants.
Sure.
You give them the entire grow medium, it's a little different.
Right.
And I'm not sure how, because I'm not a technical grower, but I can just see that from a purchasing standpoint, I would rather buy a bag of soil than a crazy looking white powder that some dude's telling me to stick into my soil.
Exactly. No, and then that's exactly what's happening. So to give you a great example of where HydroLock also prevails and where other companies capitalized on it. So you know of Scott's. Everyone knows of Scott's. Scott's fertilizer uses it for their seeds, for their grass seeds. Yeah. So you know how they have that it's called the hydration seeds, where the seed has it literally has a nanopolymer on it. So once it gets wet, it stays wet.
This is for artificial type grass, that like when they're putting down the sod, or when they're just growing grass by seed?
When they're growing grass by seed.
Okay.
So Scott's has a blend with that polymer in it. So I started to look and I said, well, look, that's their approach. Their approach was, okay, we're not going to give you this and say, hey, add it to your seeds. They said, here, we'll just make a seed, grass seed for you, and then we'll make it and put it on there for you. So all you have to do is, just like you would do with any other seed, is you put it out there and you water it, and ours is going to be better because we have that extra edge. Yeah. We have that nanopolymer on there. So, and they did very well with that. A lot of people actually, till this day use, it's still on the shelves at Home Depot. Right. So, the marketplace for that is there. But that's where their niche with it was.
I see that because I can remember growing up as a kid and my parents having sod, fake, real grass, but cut into chunks that you roll out on your lawn, and then you hope it takes with the ground underneath and becomes a lawn.
Right.
The only real thing I can remember is the just constant watering that was required, because you're taking something that used to be alive, that's kind of alive, and you're putting it back on top of a soil top, and you're hoping it grows together. It requires a lot of water. And I remember that being the issue of just the we must have just watered 24/7 to keep this 10 by 10 chunk of sod alive from turning yellow.
And sod's not cheap either.
Well, what if there were just a thin layer underneath that sod of a HydroLock, right?
They use that, yeah. That's already an application as well.
Well, I'm sure it is in that sense, but that makes sense, that type of application. And I think this company can be revived, but you're going to need somebody to develop these kind of applications and products out there.
Absolutely.
Will there ever become a point where you realize it's just not going to happen and you have to let it go?
Yeah, I have a special place in my life that I think I want, or a goal I have set where I want HydroLock to be. Now, will I achieve that goal? I hope so. I'm a positive guy. I like to think that I can bring it to that magnitude. But, there is a crossroad for me on certain things. Now, I would do whatever it takes to get HydroLock where I want it to be. Now, unless that means that I have to, hurt other people to do that, or, hurt the earth to do that. If it involves any of those two things, I'm probably out. But as far as bringing it and making my money with it, I think it's definitely a great vehicle for that. Why I'm taking my time with it, life throws curveballs, and you have to deal with them when they come, whether they be big problems or small problems. We all have to deal with it. And that's where I'm at right now, is I'm dealing with lots of different problems personally in life, just being my age. And the economy here in Colorado is booming, by the way, and it's very challenging to afford the cost of living.
It's expensive.
It is very much so.
Very expensive.
So these are, especially for an entrepreneur that doesn't have a family that's wealthy or money in his pocket, lots of money that he can do anything. I don't have that luxury of financial freedom. However, I do believe if you put enough time and effort and energy into something, that the fruits of your labor will show. Like Booker T. Washington said a great quote, and it was something along that lines. I won't try to butcher it by repeating it. However, it is, the man has a very good point, and basically what he's saying is, nothing's worth the amount. Everything is worth the amount you worked for. So as however hard you worked for something, the greater the triumph. So the harder the struggle, the greater the triumph is basically what that comes down to. And that's very true. And like I've already ran into very challenging issues with this company, especially with my business partner. All right. This is why I haven't killed it already, is because I believe that it still has a place and it will succeed. But, with a business partner that knows all the ins and outs, to go sour, that's a very concerning thing for me. Are they going to work against me? I haven't seen it yet. So that's a good sign. Could they steal things from me that were in the company that, no one knew about besides me and him? Absolutely. And those are things that are very challenging for me, and why, you have to be very cautious on who you go in business with. And that was a big lesson that I learned with HydroLock. And a lot of people learn that lesson later in life, and it can be very catastrophic. Thankfully, I learned that lesson in a smaller scale scenario where there wasn't millions of dollars at stake, thank God. The company hadn't taken off, so there was nothing really to, per se, damage or destroy as far as HydroLock goes. But that was a big eye-opener to me. So when I learned that, it was a life lesson, and now you have to pick up your cards and kind of figure out where you're going from there. So I'm on that beaten path right now, and I'm finding myself in some scenarios, though, where I'm meeting people that it would benefit a lot. And, it's funny, I don't always bring it up to a lot of people, but when I do, it still does a great job of fascinating a lot of people, which is the whole idea of it. And then to capitalize on that and make it a product that can help the world, be more efficient.
Well, I'm glad that you kind of touched on the point of the relationship, because I think a lot of times we get so caught up in the sterile world of business where we think of products and business kind of happening on its own. Like it's just something that happens and we're functioning within that. And, a product goes on to be a product, and, what's happening in people's individual lives, well, that's something different, but the product is the product. And, that's obviously not true, but it's also a good reality check that even good products can be stifled with bad relationships.
Absolutely.
And it's not always the cream rises to the top, because it depends on what you're floating in.
Exactly. No, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
And there's a lot of really, I think, bad analogies and metaphors and sayings and things that get tossed around a lot of times. But I think at the end of the day, it truly is about people having to work with people.
Absolutely.
And that is what a product, a service, a business, a company, and life is people working with people.
It's relationships.
I mean, if just the idea alone was enough to make it, I think I might be a billionaire by now, because I have a lot of great ideas. But it's the ability to get people to work with you and get shit done, as they say.
Well,
right?
And not only that, but you have to have there are things that have to align that like the stars have to align a certain way. Not that it always is that way, but you have to you have to have a significance in the time and history that you're in. And a lot of times, you can have a great idea, but it's too early or it's too late.
Right.
Okay. Like, for instance, the Wright brothers, they designed the first aerial craft. Okay. The first craft that actually flew and landed. Okay. These guys when they brought it to the public back then, they already had cars, they already had bikes, they had transportation pretty much down as far as getting from point A to point B. Planes was something that was just kind of like extra. They looked at it like, well, we don't really need planes. That's not something that's necessary. It seems actually very chaotic, and it seems very scary because it was so foreign of an idea. But look at planes now and how we rely on them as a society and as the world uses it to travel. It's a staple in quick communicate or quick logistics, and look at UPS uses it to mail. USPS uses it. All these different avenues of people that use planes for this and that. So there are plenty of uses for it. But the time, back to what people think in that time frame that you're in is important. And right now, water is not the concern. However, it is gaining momentum, and people are starting to realize that the Earth is in a position or situation that needs to be addressed in the near future. We have polar ice caps melting at record rates. Animals, we're in the 6th, I think, mass extinction. Plenty of endangered species are piling up that weren't endangered years ago. So things are starting to kind of open people's eyes. They're starting to see the bigger picture that our impact on the earth is becoming more and more severe. So we have to look to solutions. And I'm waiting for people to have that realization, which I think HydroLock has a great way of doing that, which is opening your mind to, well, what are some other ways to do other things that we normally do, and implementing something in it that will enhance that, or not use as much of that resource, or whatever the case may be, more effective of putting that fire out.
Right.
So there, and we also want to really keep bringing up the fact that it's non-toxic, because that's a very important aspect. I mean, you could eat a whole cup of it if you wanted to. I don't recommend it, but you can.
Take all the salt out of my body. And
well, no, your body is very salty, so it would exactly dissipate.
Oh, it would do the opposite. It wouldn't absorb it.
Exactly.
Are you a political person, and that's why you started this company, or is this company just in addition to wanting to do something beyond just product and business? How do you define yourself?
I wouldn't say I'm necessarily politically charged. However, I do find myself discussing politics very often. But that is, I think, a lot to do with just the current situation. Again, the time frame that we're in this point in time and on Earth. We have some interesting leaders. We have some very questionable ethics. We have high corruption rates right now. And, these are all things that are in the back of my head. But again, I'm politically charged when it comes to my country, but when it comes to other things, obviously I take it with.
You're not doing this as a social venture where HydroLock is representing something societal or
no.
From a political standpoint. As many people nowadays, that seems to be the trend, is that if you're going to start a business, it needs to be now some type of social venture where you can't just have a nanopolymer. Now you need a nanopolymer that's saving kids in India and starvation, and
now. And I'm all for that positive reinforcement of the company, right? Like a company that can say, hey, we designed like a Life Straw. They have a filtration straw that you can put into any water, and it comes out clean enough to consume for a human being. Now that's an amazing idea. And using that to help people that don't have access to clean water is a great idea. But would you use that as to make your money or to get your name out there? Right. Absolutely not. It should be an afterthought. More of like, oh, okay, well, I brought this to market. People love the idea because it's a great idea and it works. Now I'd like to do good with it.
Right.
And I'd like to take it to that level. So that, obviously if I was in the position, I would love to have HydroLock help people as much as possible. You have to start first with why it's worth it.
Yeah.
Does it work? Is it real? And
when you say that, it actually reminds me, we talked about contamination of liquid, that having a gel form, potentially that, you have a liquid something and contaminant gets in there, the entire liquid base is contaminated.
Sure.
Whereas gel form might be able to mitigate that.
Yeah.
Just restricting the dissipation of whatever that is. I remember that we talked about that a couple of years ago when we first talked about it, about, if you have a trucker and you're carrying liquid, if that liquid were in gel form and you were in an accident,
Right.
what's the difference, or if
Sure.
that liquid were contaminated, is there a way to save most of it and cut out the contaminated part versus a liquid where it's just basically it's in there.
It's done.
And again, going back to the same idea, anything could be a potential idea with this product.
That's
And
right.
that's the problem, right?
That's the problem.
You,
with it,
you almost wish we could say, well, what do we do with this? Like there's no idea. There's nothing we could do with this, but we're running into the same problem over and over, is that anything could be potentially a good idea. So there has to be some way to bring it under some big umbrella type company where you don't have to say, well, I'm starting 16 different products, but you can somehow under one core business function pursue these different ideas, but still have it be under one core business function.
Absolutely.
So that is what needs to be worked out, and I think you'll work it out with time.
Absolutely.
And maybe now that it's out in the ether, you'll have some people
Right?
contact you and say, "Hey, I've actually been thinking about this myself."
I'd love it.
I don't know. I mean, are you in a position where if somebody contacts you next week, are you ready to jump back in?
With how my life has been in the last couple months, I'd be enthusiastic to jump back in because I'm in a situation where I feel that there's nothing that's going to take HydroLock away from me, but the right time. So when I feel that those things align up correctly, I'll know the time is right and I won't hesitate to make action. But there has to be that lineup to where it has to make sense. I'm not going to go homeless. I had to quit my job to go pitch to an investor in LA or something. So I can't make those moves to do that, but I would be more than willing if the scenario played right. I would, of course, be all on board for it. But again, these are not excuses. This is reality. Okay. And that's why what happened with me with HydroLock is that I tried to do HydroLock full time and I screwed myself and that was another lesson I learned as I quit everything and focused 100% on HydroLock.
Which seems intuitive, right? That
Right,
seems
that's
like
what
the
you should
advice
do.
somebody would tell you
Right.
to do. That if
several
you want
people
this, take it,
Do it, man.
dive into it.
And I did, and I found myself in the lowest part of my life, financially shot. Okay, I'm living in my car. Okay, I had to pick myself up. I had the investor didn't want to invest in me. The business partner went sour and decided that he wasn't, that I decided he wasn't going to be in that company anymore. So now I've lost, potential money to turn this company into what it should be. And then I lost an important player in my behind the scenes. And now, you're faced with, oh, well, how are you going to pay your bills today? And then, that thought, there's so many other things I was thinking about besides paying my rent.
Yeah.
I was incorporated with. So it was very challenging, especially for someone that doesn't have the financial security to do those things. It's a tough decision, and like even till this day, I still feel like I'm kind of caught in a corner because right, if I get that call, am I going to jump? Am I going to do that same mistake again? Mm-hmm. Is it going to be a mistake if I do it? These are all questions that will arise when that call comes. But so it is nerve-wracking. But that again is the life of an entrepreneur. And if you're not willing to take that risk and fail, which I have, then you're not willing to be successful. So even though I did fail and I failed and I fell flat on my face and I had lost my my woman, I lost my business partner, and I lost the investor. And even then, I decided I wasn't going to let it go. So,
lose your dog and you could have a great country song.
Yeah, I know. Well, it was sad. The lady took the dog with her. So, I lost him too. But so all of that coming down on one person is very stressful and can cause any sane man to lose his, not sanity, but lose perspective on, what the future entails for him in that company. But
if you're already insane,
I'm already here, baby. All right. So no, but that's and that's what I look at it in life is like, when I'm on my deathbed, do I want to sit there and reflect and say, oh, I played life really easy. I didn't decide to go out every day and chase after the things I wanted. I went and did, the easy thing, easy way out. And, and your life will be easy, sure. But you know what, man? It's so much worth it. It's way more worth it to me to know that I wake up every day and I'm doing what I want to do and I influence people and I love it. And I don't want it any other way. Even though I'm struggling now, I have a feeling in the future it's not not something that I will worry about.
Well, I would support that decision based on the outline you just gave. I currently take that path myself. I work part-time jobs that have nothing to do with cannabis. They're
Right.
just part-time jobs to help pay the rent.
Right.
And I watch other people take the all-in route where they try to do the go through like the canopy and constantly just chasing investors so they can support themselves and their business, where they're just chasing the investment role. Not that I would knock either way. For me, I'm choosing your route. I'm working other jobs. I do things slowly. I intentionally do not jump in 100% with this or try to pursue the investor role and do that as a full-time, because that is a full-time job. Once you start pursuing investors, forget about building your company.
Yeah.
I hope you have somebody else to work on your company.
It is.
Because pursuing investors is the job.
It is, yeah.
And that's the mistake I've seen a lot of these startups get into, is that they spend so much time pursuing investors, they're not actually working on their company, and their companies fall apart.
And they
products
lose.
suck.
Because
they want to pursue investors, and that is a job. That is a full-time job.
It is.
So I applaud what you're doing, and even if you don't get HydroLock per se up and going, I think everything you've learned from the process, I think, is enough to bring value from it. Because
Absolutely.
there always is that question. Sometimes you got to let things go. When is that point? Who knows?
Right.
It's like with my podcast.
Will it end today? To be determined.
Honestly, before you
Next
came
week.
in, I was contemplating that. I mean, there's always that idea, because it's expectation, right? Everybody wants to go, hey, I got the product, here it is, and then it goes, right?
Sure.
Just like I want to do the show, and then every week there's just thousands and thousands of new listeners, and it's just a skyrocket,
Sure, yeah.
Expectations will lead to depression and anger and even happiness.
And what you just said is how everyone should look at relationships, even when it comes to your wife or daughter or your best friend or your coworkers. The bigger the expectation, the more likely that you won't get that expectation.
Yeah.
So expectations need to drop, and you need to just expect yourself to do what you need to do, and don't allow anyone else's whatever someone else expects needs to be within a threshold of everyone's understanding, because that is a big problem I've noticed with people nowadays. And I don't mean to go down the rabbit hole, but with relationships especially, is expectations seem to be the first thing that gets in the way of everyone's relationship with anybody, whether it be platonic or romantic. If you expect something from somebody and they don't realize the magnitude of that expectation, you will be disappointed 90% of the time.
Yes.
And that's what happens with as being an owner. And if you hire somebody and you expect them to be the superhero when you got a Robin, it's not,
Right.
It doesn't work that way. So you have to drop the expectations, and start looking at people as human beings and communicate how. Then expectations will manifest themselves once you communicate on where each one's roles play. So, but anyways, that was down the rabbit hole.
I think that's a great way to kind of fade out of this show is with that idea. If an entrepreneur listening to this can get nothing else out of this conversation, maybe it's just that end thought that as you're managing your daily life, manage your expectations.
Absolutely. I can't stress that anymore. I expected, for example, HydroLock to be a $1 million company by 2018. And I'm probably going to be wrong, possibly not. We'll find out. But the idea of that expectation is a good goal, and it's healthy to set goals like that. But at the same time, you have to be realistic with yourself. And don't get me wrong, always follow your dreams, but also be very brutally realistic with yourself on a lot of situations, because even though it makes sense to you, it may not make sense on different perspectives, and everybody is going to protect their perspective.
Right.
But you have to have empathy. If you don't have empathy in any industry or being an entrepreneur, you're gonna lose and fail constantly.
Right.
So being able to understand how people think is very vital. And again, using the term empathy is exactly what you have to do, especially in relationships. So be empathetic and chase your dreams.
Yes, that's a great way to end. I don't really have anything I can add to that. I think you've said it pretty much the best way it is to be said. Your update from 2 years ago till now, I think, is just as positive. And I truly hope that you find something with this company, but at the same time, I think you'll find something. I don't know if HydroLock will be it, but I think you'll find something, because I tend to look at people kind of for who they are as a person, not necessarily what are you holding on to. And you're holding on to HydroLock, which may or may not be a good product.
Right.
No, it may or may not be a good company. We know it's a good product.
Right.
We don't know if a company will be able to be pulled out of it.
Sure.
But I think as a person, I think you're the type of person that will find something
of course,
to be successful at. And that is probably more important than the actual product you're dealing with.
Thank you.
You may have a winner, but it just may not be the right time, resources, and everything to make it go.
Exactly.
But what I'm kind of getting to here is this idea of expectation. What if my expectation was not by 2018 to have 1 million listeners and $1 million in sponsorship? What if my expectation was just to get to 2018 and still be producing shows?
That is actually probably well said, man. That is exactly the idea that you have to have in your goals is not emphasized necessarily on financials, but emphasize more on the growth of the company and the growth of the market you're reaching, and the demographic maybe of people. I mean, there's so much more aspects to it that can be admired than just the financial side. If I was only in HydroLock for the money, I'd be out. I would have been out since I left the marijuana show. It wasn't the money that got me. There wasn't the money that I necessarily needed to feel fulfilled, but it was what I wanted to do with that financial money, and what that could have manifested into is what the beautiful part is this, a product that helps thousands of people, helps retain water, and, is putting out fires left and right and all these other cool things. That's awesome, right? And the idea of the value for me is not the money, but the people that you can help with and in between, your uses of your product. So,
well, there you go. If that doesn't inspire you to get involved, I don't know what will. But let me make sure you give out some contact information, because you never know, right?
You never know.
You never know who's listening that likes what you have to say, that just likes the way you say it, or that just likes the idea of the HydroLock, of the nanopolymer. So let's get some contact information out there. Where do you want to send people?
So the best place would be to obviously I'm all over social media. Facebook, my name is Ian Azam, IANAZZAM. I'm probably the only Ian Azam in the world, so you shouldn't have a problem finding that. However, I'm also on Instagram at Captain Azam, and that is Captain No Space Azam, AZZAM. And these are the main avenues that I'm on, but I'm also on LinkedIn. Again, just verbatim use that name, Ian Azam. I'd love to see and hear people's inputs. Also, even if you have an idea and you just say, hey, I want to bounce this off you and see what you think of what my invention is or my idea. I love brainstorming. I think it's very critical for intellectual people to have an avenue of relaying their intelligence or their ideas, and have people collectively have a constructive opinion, or just say, hey man, that's a great idea, I love what you're doing, keep it up. So any kind of positive boosts or anything of that nature, I'd love to hear you out and hear what you have to say. And I'm always here for you. I'm here for any entrepreneur out there that feels like they're alone or that they're on the bottom. That's the whole point of being an entrepreneur at the beginning, is that it's a struggle, but with great struggle comes great triumph. So
excellent. We need an entrepreneur support group.
That's right.
Very good, man. I hope I don't have to wait 2 more years to get you back in studio. Actually, this is the first first time you've been in the studio. The first time we
love
did the
it,
show, we
man.
did it from my living room kitchen table.
I remember that, man.
Yes,
Good times.
And now look at me now.
You're doing great. No, he's right though. Like the history we have together is very funny because he's right. The first time we did this was in his house, and now I walk. He gives me this address, like, hey man, come down and talk with me, and gives me this address, and I'm assuming it's the same place that his house. Come to find out, this guy is he's in a really beautiful building. He's got this nice window. He's
Dank Dispensary, 3835 Elm Street. Dank has been a great supporter, providing the studio here for me, and also having an on-site dispensary. It's great up here. Come check it out. But this is the studio, so I'll expect you to be back in studio sometime before 2 years.
Of course.
Even if it's not to talk about HydroLock. And I got some other ideas for podcasts, too, that I'm going to keep growing on the podcasting realm. I want to expand some ideas.
Yes.
I got another business of my own that I'm working into, so I'm actually thinking about bringing some other people in to host for me while I work on that business a little bit.
I love it. I love the idea.
So stay in touch. There'll be a lot going on.
Of course.
And if nothing else, we'll do the bar jello wrestling.
Last resort, man. That's always in, right? That's
Cool, man. All right. Thanks
ladies.
for coming down.
There you go, Cannapreneurs. Thank you for joining me this week. Make sure to come back next week. We'll be talking to even more guests from the industry, from the government, from the entrepreneur world. Make sure to reach out to us on all the social media, Massroots, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and any place else, all under the same name, CannabisCommunityProject.com. We'll see you next week.